Let's get underway. My name is Lisa Rodacher. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at Washington and Lee University School of Law. And I'm really excited today to be joined by some of our 3Ls. And this is a little bit of a nostalgia webinar. This is a little bit of a walk through memory road. We're asking for some of these students as they're getting very close to graduation, to the end of their time in law school, to reflect a bit about those 3 years and their thought processes and some of the experiences that we've had here. And hopefully this will really give you insight, our attendees, into the law school experience. So we'll start. I will ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, provide just a brief background of where they're coming from and what they're involved in here at the law school. We do want to make this as helpful to our attendees as possible. So if you would like to put questions into the chat or utilize the Q&A feature, I will do my best to work those questions in either during our conversation or towards the end. But for now, I'm going to call on each of our panelists, ask them to introduce themselves, and then we will get underway with questions. So Catherine, you're my first square, if you don't mind sharing.
Nope, I can definitely go first. So my name is Catherine. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. Obviously, I'm a current 3L. I went to W&L for undergrad, so if you have any Lexington-related questions, I'm happy to help with that, having been a student here for 7 years. In terms of law school involvement, I'm the president of our Student Bar Association, co-president of WILSO, which is our women law student organization. I helped start Art Law Society last year. And I'm also a research Burke Scholar. And then next year I'll be practicing back in Houston doing restructuring, so kind of Chapter 11 related bankruptcy at Weill Gotshal.
Perfect. Thank you. Spencer, you're my next square.
Okay. Hey, y'all. My name is Spencer Thomas. I am from Spartanburg, South Carolina, originally. I went to Wofford College for undergrad. I graduated in 2017. I spent a few years in the Army before law school, and then a few years after that working at my alma mater's admission office. At the law school, I was a Curtis Fellow as a 2L. I'm a member of the First Gen Student Union. I'm also a legal writing Burke Scholar, and I've been involved with LSFL and other not so serious but still integral parts of W&L Law all 3 years.
Absolutely. And as I think a lot of people who've come to W&L would say, LSFL or Law School Football League, we can often consider to be an integral part of the law school experience. So, all right, last but not least, Ariana.
Hi everyone. I'm just gonna apologize for my voice a little bit. We had an insane temperature change overnight, basically, and my body has not caught up to the cold again. But I'm Ariana. I am kind of from Little Rock, Arkansas, but also kind of from Westchester, New York. Long story. But I went to the University of Arkansas for undergrad. I worked in the immigration refugee protection space prior to law school. And now, let's see, in the law school, I'm a Ratchford Fellow for the Office of Career Strategy. So basically a student liaison helping 1Ls and 2Ls through the job search process. I'm also an executive editor on our law review. And let's see what else. I was a Courageous Fellow my 2L year. And after graduation, I'll be returning to New York, working at the same firm as Catherine, but the New York office doing finance and banking work.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to ask you all to reflect back a few years, think back to your law school experience, and go back to the start. So the summer or just before you actually started here at the law school. What were you most excited about? What were you nervous about? And how have those things played out during your time here? And Ariana, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, so prior to law school, I was living in New York and I loved being in the city. And so I think my number one concern was how was I going to adapt to such a small town? And I am here to say that I love it so much and I will be so, so sad to leave. So I had really nothing to stress about, but that was definitely like causing a lot of stress. Like, I don't know anyone in Lexington. I don't know anyone at W&L. Am I going to make friends? Is it going to feel like home to me? And it definitely 3 years later has. But I was really excited about a new change of pace and doing something different. I graduated college in 2020, so I felt like I was in this limbo period post-COVID, post-college. I was kind of ready to like start fresh and kind of like leave all that COVID stuff in the back and kind of move forward and have a new start in Lexington.
Perfect. Spencer.
Sorry. I'm realizing I didn't actually say what I'm doing next. So to the extent that that's helpful at all, I'm going to go clerk for a year on the South Carolina Supreme Court, and then after that, I'll go to a big law firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, I was extremely nervous about keeping up with the schoolwork. I was pleasantly shocked when I got into W&L Law to begin with, and I was scared I was going to feel out of my depth. That did not happen ultimately, even though I think I probably did feel that way initially. Um, in my experience, this place rewards hard work, just like any other institution tends to do. And I was really excited. I felt like W&L really going through the admission process leaned into the community dynamic. It's a fantastic law school, but it felt like the school branded itself at least as something more than just this, professional education. That there really was a sense of community and camaraderie, and that has absolutely been the case. And that's what I am certainly, I think, sad to leave behind. There is, I think, it attracts a community-minded person, and it's a really social school. It's so small. Most of your friends, by necessity, will be your classmates. Um, and I was every expectation I had has been exceeded in that way.
Thanks, Spencer. And thanks for sharing also what you were doing professionally. That's really helpful. Catherine, I know you're coming from a somewhat different lens as you were here already for undergrad, but can you share quickly what you were most excited about or nervous for and how that played out?
I think I was nervous because obviously I did know people still in Lexington, but I really wanted to have a different experience than I had undergrad, and I really wanted to like make those connections and foster that community as Spencer was just talking about with new friends and new people. And I had no trouble at all making friends, having been here in Lexington before, or for my friends who were new to Lexington, getting to meet them. So I think because Spencer, as Spencer mentioned, like it is a small community, and by nature of that, almost all of your friends will be your classmates. I think that's one of the great things about W&L is because it kind of forces everyone to bond and get to know each other really well. And I think that that is a huge benefit of the law school because it really strengthens us as a community. On a more academic side, I was really scared about cold calls. I think that was something that I was just like, I don't know, you see, you watch Legally Blonde and you're like, oh my gosh, is it going to be like that on day one? And what if I don't do the reading? And I think, every professor does it differently, but kind of knowing what to expect and just coming prepared to class and, reading the materials, you really do all that you can do. And then because of that supportive community, and having friends in your class, you never feel like, oh, I really just messed up that cold call. And even if you do, it's really not that big deal and no one remembers, because it truly is such a supportive environment. And everyone is worried about themselves in that moment and not about each other. So
That's perfect. Thank you. One of the questions we get a lot in the admissions office is about the life and the experience in Lexington and specifically the transition. So on the housing side, I'd be curious if anyone wanted to share where they lived in their 1L year, if they lived in that same place all 3 years. Catherine, I guess I'll start back to you and then I'll circle back.
So I live across from the cemetery, which I like to joke that it's deadly quiet. Sorry if any of you have heard me make that joke before, I apologize. But I've lived in the same place for 3 years. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, but it really is only fit for one person or a couple. I use the second bedroom as an office, but I've really enjoyed living where I live. It's walkable into town. I can walk to school. I don't. But it's been a wonderful place for the past 3 years.
That's great. Spencer, what's your experience been?
So I've moved all 3 years. My first year I was downtown, right beside Sweet Treats. If any of you have been in Lexington, it's on West Washington. It was a perfectly fine place. I um, grew really close with two of my neighbors during my 1L year, and for 2L we decided to move about 15 minutes out of town in this cabin in the middle of the woods, which by Lexington standards was way too far away after doing it for a year. It was great. We had a ton of fun, but we all decided to come back into downtown Lex for our 3L year. We're all still neighbors. We all live right beside each other, but we wanted to be back downtown. I haven't had any trouble finding housing, but I do think part of the allure of being at W&L is being in downtown Lexington because it's such a unique place.
Thanks for sharing that. Ariana?
Yeah, so my 1L, I found a house through Facebook, through the W&L House Exchange. I knew I wanted to live downtown and I knew I wanted roommates. So I sent a message like in our Facebook group asking if there were anyone else that needed roommates. And we found a house that fit 3 of us and it was great. But I realized for 2L, I kind of wanted my own space and I felt comfortable in the community enough to live alone. And so I reached out to a couple 3Ls at the time who were graduating and asked them about their housing situation. And I moved into this house that is right beside Spencer's. And it's a big house that's been subdivided into 3 different apartments. And so we all have our own space. Like there's no common area, but we're technically all under the same roof. And it's been really great being there the past 2 years. And it's been passed, I just found this out, it's been passed down to law students for like generations and generations. So that's a fun little bit of history.
Thanks for sharing that, everyone. I want to circle over to academics. If you can think back, again, this is in the 1L year, what was your favorite class as a 1L? And Ariana, if you don't mind, we're going to go backwards and start with you.
My favorite class 1L year was hands down contracts with Professor Drumble. He just puts on a show every class and it was so engaging to me. I was always on it. I felt like I wanted to read for the class because I wanted to be able to engage with Professor Drumble and his like fun little antics. And I really enjoyed his style of cold calling. And like Catherine said earlier, every professor does have a different style. So, you know, what works for one person may not work for another. But for Professor's Drumble's style of cold calling really worked for me. And it was very just like random with the timing. And so you kind of had to be like paying attention to it. It felt like super like high speed and fun. And I really enjoyed that.
That's great. Spencer?
Yeah, I loved torts as a matter of substance. I think it's the most intuitive, at least it was to me. I felt lost in contracts. I had contracts with Professor Fairfield, who has a brain that's just on a different plane than most people. I enjoyed torts. I think the case law is the easiest to comprehend. It's elegant language. A lot of the cases are older. I think it's the most useful for understanding how old school common law used to work. But then I would also say I enjoyed legal writing a ton as well. I think it's probably the most important course you take in all of law school, whether you want to litigate or whether you want to go be a transactional attorney. It's a really critically important skill. Ariana and I had the same professor. She's not at WL anymore, but we've kept in contact with her. I think legal writing is a blast as well.
Thank you. And definitely a critical skill. Catherine, if you don't mind.
I was going to say torts as well was probably my favorite subject matter. I just felt like it was really digestible, especially in the same semester as contracts, where I was also it didn't all click until right before the exam for me. But I thought that I really enjoyed reading the case law for torts and just kind of hearing these like wacky stories. But to say something different from Spencer, I'll go with property because I really enjoyed the way that Professor Seaman taught our class. Again, like Ariana mentioned, I really liked his style of cold calling. He would go down the row, so you kind of knew when you were next or if you were going to be on deck that day, which I really appreciated. Kind of, you know, it's coming, so you're able to kind of prepare in that way. And he also taught with PowerPoints and is just a super engaging professor. I ended up taking intellectual property with him the following semester in the fall of my 2L year, but also super interesting case law and just kind of wacky stuff happening when it comes to property. And, everyone's renting pretty much in Lexington, or, some people might own a house, but it felt relevant to kind of our tenants' rights and things like that. So I would say property and torts were my two favorite.
Thank you so much. Does anyone, I don't want to put anybody on the spot if they don't have one on the top of their heads, but does anybody have a memorable story from 1L year that they'd like to share with the group?
I do. Um, I have two different memories that involve the same thing, and it's the day of or day after taking your last exam for that semester. The day after fall exams ended, I made French toast in my apartment and invited my two neighbor friends over, and we just like sat in silence and ate breakfast, and it's just ruminated in the fact that we had just conquered the first semester. And then similarly, our last day of finals as a 1L, um, I think all three of us on this call, actually, I know Catherine was there. We went to Great Valley Winery, which is only about 10 minutes from campus, and the degree of euphoria, it's hard to describe. Of regardless, you could have absolutely botched the exam, which that doesn't really happen, frankly. But just the excitement of being done and being around people, only your classmates really fully appreciate how you feel because they feel the same way. You can call your parents or your friends or family or whomever, and they're going to know how hard you worked, but really it's only classmates that can fully embrace that satisfaction. And again, fortunately, at a place like W&L, you do it together.
That's wonderful. I'm sure that everybody appreciated your French toast and being able to share and reminisce in those ways. So, Catherine, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess another kind of memory is one of the big things you do 1L year is submit your 1L appellate brief, which I know our 1Ls are doing slash did this past weekend and this week. But I'll never forget, I was working with my partner at the double monitor submitting our appellate brief, and we were using the school laptops because we didn't want anything to go, or school desktops because we didn't want anything to go wrong. We upload it to Canvas, we send it in, we're popping our sparkling apple cider at the double monitors, we're celebrating. We look at the Canvas, what we submitted, and it was in Comic Sans. Our entire appellate brief was in Comic Sans, like just the way it uploaded or whatever. And so it was so funny, but we were like crying, laughing, like, what just happened? Why did it change from Times New Roman to Comic Sans? And we emailed our professor and it was all fine, but it was just kind of the being able to laugh at ourselves in that moment and just be like, what just happened? Will always be a favorite 1L memory of mine.
That's hilarious. Ariana, anything?
Yeah, I can share. This is technically pre-1L year, but I moved in a few days early, prior to orientation, and my roommates were there, and then my neighbors across the street, who have become two of my closest friends, were also there, and someone had sent a message in our group me that there was like a group of 3Ls that were hanging out because they were there early as well for whatever reason at the time. And so a bunch of incoming 1Ls who were there early like went and hung out with this group. And the five of us, my roommates and then my two neighbors, went over there. We met all these like incoming 1Ls and 3Ls. And it just kind of solidified so many friendships for me right off the bat, which was so crazy. But if I think a piece of advice is if something like that comes up and you're anxious because you don't really have friends or you don't know anyone, just do it because you're going to meet so many great people. And then when we started orientation, I like saw so many friendly faces already and felt so much more comfortable because of that one night of interactions.
That's great. And we definitely want to get the advice that you all may want to share with our participants. Transitioning into the summer after the 1L year, if you can share, and Spencer, I'll have you start what you did that first summer and maybe how that helped you to move forward, or if you would prefer how you secured that summer position, anything about that first 1L to 2L summer.
Sure. So my first summer, I spent 8 weeks with a law firm called Bradley Arant. They're a national law firm, or I say not, it's a humongous law firm, but they are primarily in the Southeast. In any event, I was in Birmingham, Alabama. And then after those 8 weeks, I spent 4 weeks with a federal judge in the Western District of Virginia in Roanoke. My second summer, I spent the bulk of the summer with the law firm called Troutman Pepper, now Troutman Pepper Locke in Charlotte, which is the one I'm going back to. And then I did a touchback 2 week stint back at Bradley in Birmingham. I secured all the jobs I've ever had up to now have been either directly through W&L or leveraging a W&L network. I got Bradley and Troutman both through our on-campus interview process. Bradley was in, I think, February of our 1L year. They're one of the few firms, although maybe this is changing. It seems like it's changing, that really hired a ton of 1Ls in addition to 2Ls. And then I got the internship with Judge Dillon through an alum named Matt Kamener, who was her clerk at the time. Fantastic guy. And he just put my resume to the top of the stack. And then same thing at the end of the 1L summer, we had OCIs for 2L, and that was how I landed at Troutman.
Great, thank you. Catherine?
So my 1L summer, I worked with a state trial level civil court judge in Houston for about 3.5 weeks. One of the nice things about W&L is we get out on the earlier side for law school, so you're able to, like, even if you're not truly like splitting your summer down the middle, kind of have a small thing before your big thing. And so that's kind of what I was able to do, is I worked basically from, you know, right after I finished exams until like Memorial Day. And then I went to the United States Attorney's Office in DC, where I was a part of the appellate division. I got my judicial kind of internship through a family friend who was a judge, and she was just someone I connected with, and she was like, I have the perfect judge for you. I think that you guys would be great together. So that was an incredible first experience and kind of my first exposure into the legal world, getting to see things that I had just read case law about firsthand in the courtroom and kind of hearing her opinions on that. So I really, really appreciated having kind of that judicial as my first legal exposure. And then was up in DC at the USAO, which I got through GPIP, which is our government. I'm going to mess up the acronym, so Dean Rodacker, please correct me, but I think it's the Government and Public Interest Interview Program. Yes. And that was where I kind of submitted my resume and cover letters for about 10 different jobs. I think I got interviews at about 6 of those, and it was kind of a fast round robin interview. And I actually got offered the job in the interview, which was incredible. So I was able to kind of do that for the second part of my summer, and that was a great experience. And then for my 2L job summer, I applied through both like the OCI program that W&L offers and kind of cold applied to other firms. Eventually, I kind of got Weil through kind of just cold applying to Houston law firms. And yeah, that's how I spent my 2L summer. So
Thanks, Catherine. Ariana?
So I was so unsure what I wanted to do. I had heard this like rhetoric that if you love law school, then you should be a litigator. And I did love law school. So I was like, oh, that means I should do litigation. But I have an undergrad background in economics, and I just kind of thought that I would want to do transactional. I loved contracts. So I was like, do I need to be doing contract work? I was just so up in the air. And so I spoke with our OCS about like what is a good strategy. The one thing I was certain about was that I wanted to be in New York. And so it kind of came down to like looking at firms that would allow me to do a rotational program, or I felt like I found the golden egg. So my 1L summer, I worked with a judge at the U.S. Court of International Trade, and that just was a perfect combination for me because I was working with a judge. I was doing like, it's all litigation, but everything that is being litigated is all international trade. So it's all economics, and it's all corporate in nature. And so I was able to write about economic reasoning and kind of see that blend of litigation and corporate work. But I still didn't necessarily know what transactional work looked like in practice. I had a phenomenal experience. I loved my judge, loved the clerks I worked with. So during 1L, I was networking very heavily with W&L alumni that are in New York working at large firms that are either doing corporate work or like corporate litigation. And I just reached out to so many and applied that way. And I landed on Weil Gotchel, which would then, for my 2L summer, allow me to rotate through both the corporate practice and their litigation practice. Finally, I came to a decision that I wanted to do corporate work, but I had to go through a lot of exposure to both to figure that out.
Thank you all for those stories. That was really helpful. All right, we're going to transition into the second year, a very busy year for you all, and a year where you start to decide which classes you want to take. So, Spencer, I'm going to go to you first. Can you talk a little bit about the choices that you made in terms of classes to take and which classes you found to be the most helpful?
Yeah, so my favorite two classes I think I took 2L were Crim Pro investigation, so Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment, constitutional law, basically, with Dean Wilson, the dean of the law school. She's a really fantastic teacher. And then I took federal white collar crime. That was not I sort of fell into that. Our schedule changed, and it was actually the first week of 2L had begun, and my schedule changed. I needed to fill it with something. Tom DiBaggio is a former U.S. attorney, career prosecutor who did big fancy white collar defense for a little while after he left the U.S. Attorney's office. Um, those were fantastic courses. Mass media with Professor Murchison, who's like a W&L institution, was also fantastic. As far as like the strategy for choosing courses, you're somewhat restrained, frankly, because the 3Ls get priority. So it's what's left. Now, obviously, a ton of courses are left. So I prioritized a combination of what did I know the bar was going to require me to know, and then also just what seems substantively interesting to me. Mass media is a combination of First Amendment and tort law, really. Not that useful for the bar, frankly, but substantively fascinating. And I knew I wanted to have a class with Professor Murchison because he is such an institution. So I'm not sure there's any right or wrong way to go about choosing classes. It's never a bad rule of thumb simply to do things that you find interesting or that you think you'll find interesting, because then you're more likely to be engaged throughout, a busy semester.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Always a good reminder. Ariana, do you want to share anything about classes in the 2L year?
Sure. I think it's pretty common to feel this tension with the need to take courses that are going to be bar tested and the want to take classes that just pique your interest. And I talk to a ton of students, 2Ls and 3Ls, or practicing attorneys and asking them like what they found was the best way to go about it. And by and large, I heard people say to take classes you wanted to take in. I mean, like everyone, for the most part, everyone should and will take bar prep very seriously. So if you, during your law school career, can do a mix of bar tested courses and classes that you're actually really interested in, if you're not interested in the bar tested courses, that's like a perfect combination. So going into my 2L year, I was extremely anxious about my 2L summer associate position. I was just like really scared about not knowing anything and just not knowing how to do my assignments. And I obviously really wanted to impress the partners and senior associates that were giving me assignments down the road. And so I really kind of switched my focus into taking classes that I felt like would set me up best for success for my summer. And kind of took that along for my 2L year. You have some required, not necessarily specific required courses you have to take, but there are requirements obviously to hit for graduation. So some things you kind of have to fit in. But I took cross-border transactions, which is a practicum class, which really truly was taught like you were a summer associate or a junior associate getting assignments from a partner. And I felt like that class really set me up for success. I also took business associations, which was a very fundamental course. It really like laid a foundation for everything, I felt like, and it also helped me so much writing my law review note. So it was helpful to take a class that I would be having to explain in my law review notes. So I knew I was getting the law right. But yeah, that was my strategy.
That's great. Thank you. Catherine, how about for you?
I think just to echo like mostly what everyone has said, I think it's important to take a blend of classes. I was super excited to be able to take practicum classes just because it seemed like it was going to be a little bit more engaging and I was going to be able to do some more hands-on stuff with that. And that is very true. You get to kind of have a little bit more interaction with kind of the law and like you're doing assignments more frequently through the semester instead of one big exam at the end. So I took complex commercial contract negotiations, which at the time was with a new professor, Professor Stanton, and she was absolutely amazing. I really, really enjoyed that class, and it was kind of a nice build on from our contracts class the previous fall. So I really enjoyed having her. I also took our higher education practicum. Which was super interesting and kind of focused on different areas and issues that come with running a college or a higher education institution. And it was taught by two adjunct professors who both like this is what they've worked on in their field for decades. So they were really knew the law well and were able to kind of set up situations for us to be able to write motions and argue oral arguments on and kind of new intersections of how like pets in schools, how that works. So I was just fascinated by kind of the breadth and depth that that class covered. Um, I did take 17 credits in my second semester of 2L year, which I warn people against doing. So don't be like me. Don't do that to yourself. The classes will still be there next year, but definitely would encourage people to not take 17 credits because you will feel slightly overwhelmed. We also have two one-credit classes that I took during my 2L year. So financial literacy happened the summer or like 1 week before we started our 2L classes, and I had no economics, finance background prior to coming to law school. So that was kind of a great, just like hear the word spoken, terminology, kind of get a better understanding about what, finance looks like in the legal space. So I really appreciated that. And it was kind of an easy way to ease back into school, kind of getting back into that rhythm and routine of sitting in class for, periods of time. And I also took problems in corporate law with Joseph Slights, who was a W&L alum, and he was a judge in the in the Delaware Chancery Courts. So super knowledgeable. He was telling us stories all about like Elon Musk testifying in court, which was super entertaining, and kind of just getting to hear his spin on things. So I'd encourage you to take those one credit classes, even though they seem short or it's, a night class for a week. But you really can learn a lot, and it's a really cool experience to be able to hear from someone who like this is what they do. Especially also with the practicums and hearing from the adjuncts, like this is what they do, and they're here to teach this class. Kind of as a side gig to get to know law students and help shape the future of the legal field. So
Thank you. That's really, really great advice. And I know everybody has their own story of their academics, but it sounds like you all picked ones that worked really well for you. So we want to also think about another big component of the 2L year, which is this is when you really begin to be a leader in various organizations. You take on various roles that you're really passionate about. I'm going to ask each of you, and Ariana, I'll start with you, to talk a little bit about organizations that you got more involved in or leadership roles that you pursued either in the 2L or in the 3L year.
Yeah, so one of the first things I did, there are a ton of affinity groups, but I noticed that there was not one for Middle Eastern or South Asian law students. And so a couple friends and I came together and we were like, we really need this space for students who identify in this way to just have community together instead of like just picking each other out of a crowd and being like, hey, I think maybe we come from similar backgrounds. And so we formalized the Middle Eastern and South Asian Law Students Association. And my 2L year was president of the organization. And I kind of wanted it to be a little bit different than the other affinity organizations in the sense that I thought that what was needed right now for the group was just a space to come together. So we would just have dinners together and hang out and just check in with each other rather than putting on a ton of programming, which most of our affinity organizations do and are really successful in doing. I just felt like for our first year in operation, maybe we should take just a more calming ground, which we did, and that was really awesome. So it wasn't a huge lift for me. But I was a Curtis Fellow my 2L year with Spencer, and we applied for this our 1L year. Basically, Curtis Fellows are peer mentors. So there are 12 2Ls and in pairs that are assigned to each small section of 1Ls. So the group of 2 would have like a group of close to 20 1Ls, and we just helped guide them along their 1L year since we had just done that. And that was probably the biggest time commitment for me. I was a member of a ton of organizations, but I didn't necessarily take on a ton of leadership roles because I was a little bit more focused on my academics and I didn't want to feel overrun and I didn't feel like I could be someone who could balance it. So I kind of was a little choosy in what I wanted to be super involved in. And so for me, that was the Courageous Fellow program, being on law review, working with Miss Salsa, and then also being an ambassador for admissions. So that was kind of, I'm pretty sure that was like the extent of my involvement, but I felt like informally I was very involved in the law school.
I think you covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much. And Spencer, Ariana mentioned that you both were Courageous Fellows. Maybe we can transfer over to you and you can share a little bit about your involvement outside of the classroom.
Sure. So as Ariana said, I was a Curtis Fellow as well. I think I I have friends at other law schools. I'm sure every law school has some sort of mentorship program that's formalized. It, I think what we do is really great. It's substantively helpful. I benefited a ton from my Curtis Fellows as a 1L, so I knew it was something I wanted to do. Was fortunate enough to get chosen to do it, and I had a really good experience. I am also on the law review. That's not really a leadership position as a 2L, but it is a time commitment. I was and remain in, as I said, I think earlier, in the first gen student union. I benefited quite significantly as well from the mentors that I had as a 1L with FGSU. So I really leaned into looking out for my mentee as a 2L with FGSU as well. Um, there are loads of, as Ariana said, there are lots of different ways to be involved in the campus, and I do think there's merit. It's important not to spread yourself so thin that you're not doing anything effectively, and I think that's a possibility. As a 3L, I think I probably have done that a little bit, but as a 2L, I did, I think, pick my spots in a way that I was able to meaningfully engage, I think, with the things that I chose to do while not sacrificing the schoolwork, because it is a lot. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
It was great. Thank you. And Catherine, you mentioned at the beginning in your intro your involvement with SBA. Why don't you share a bit about your just general involvement outside of the classroom?
For sure. So I joined, sorry, my camera's being funky. I joined SBA my 2L year. I ran for our executive secretary. Just wanted to get involved in like more of like the student government life, and I knew that position was going to be open. So I was really excited when I got elected, and then ultimately stayed on to be president this year. And our student bar association basically is kind of we're in charge of all the activity groups on campus and organizations. So we disperse funds to them, we approve of events. But it's really kind of like the main like social, I don't know, head engine of that. So we put on a lot of the big school functions throughout the year, starting with the first Friday of classes or the first Thursday. We have our student org fair, where I definitely recommend you guys come out, sign up for anything that vaguely sounds interesting, put your name on the list, get on the email list. And then, ultimately, if you don't want to go to something or you're not feeling the vibes, you can always ask to be taken off that. But it is kind of great just to like put your name on those lists and kind of get that constant communication from different orgs. So that's kind of the first big thing we do. And then we have various social events throughout the year, including like law school prom, which we had a couple weeks ago, barrister's ball. And so SBA is kind of in charge of putting on all those events. We also try to do more like community outreach events. We've had a Habitat for Humanity build, and we also picked up trash a couple weekends ago to help beautify Rockbridge County. So we try to do a mix of events that appeal to everyone. We had a Ben and Jerry's truck come a couple weeks ago, which was very exciting. But I would say everyone who's on SBA, from our 1L representative level all the way up to president, kind of helps contribute. We're very much a team mentality when it comes to kind of how we operate on SBA. But that is a potential opportunity for you guys to get involved. We have a 1L president and 1L vice president. So those elections will be held in the fall. And then in terms of other involvement, I had my 2L year. I've also been involved with WILSO all 3 years. So I was a WILSO events chair my 1L year, and then I was the VP of events my 2L year before being president 3L year, but basically in charge of planning all the big WILSO events. So we try to have something big at least once a month to kind of just bring women in the law school together. I've been an ambassador for 2 years. And I'm on a different journal from Ariana and Spencer. I'm on the Journal of Civil Rights and Social Justice. So again, not really in a leadership role my 2L year, but taking on your note, writing your note is a full time commitment, it feels like. So that's a 2-semester process for our journal. And then I've served as our symposium editor my 3L year, so planning our symposium to put on kind of just an academic session with different professors from law schools across the country. So that was a great endeavor, but very rewarding. This year it was all on education, which was very timely since the Department of Education got disbanded the day before, or not disbanded, but significantly scaled back the day before. But yeah, I think that kind of is my highlight reel, I guess, for my 2L and 3L involvement.
That's perfect. And I will point out to our attendees, I have been putting some links into the chat. So if you want to learn more about some of the things that we've referenced, please feel free to go on our website and explore those various links. I think we kind of talked briefly already about your all summer experience after the 2L year as well. If anybody has a highlight that they didn't get a chance to share, put your hand on up and we can call on that. If not, we'll transition into the 3L year, because as we all know, every student at W&L completes some form of live client experience for credit, and that could be a clinic or an externship, or in some cases, some of our what we call practicum courses actually fulfill that because they're working with a live client. So I'm going to ask each of you to share what you did for your live client experience, which typically, again, happens as a 3L. So Spencer, do you mind if we start with you?
No, I'm happy to speak to mine. Mine was fantastic. I was a student prosecutor. Basically, I did the prosecution externship. I worked in the city of Roanoke with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office there. It is I think, based on friends who have done other experiences, it's the best way to get in the courtroom. I was in there at least once a week, typically twice a week. Every single day in the office, I was in the courtroom, either trying cases like basic, very small misdemeanors, or sitting in on felony cases. I ultimately got I got to first chair of Fourth Amendment motion to suppress hearing, which was really, really awesome. The ACA on the case gave me a ton of discretion. I wrote the motion. I argued the hearing. It was about 2 hours of putting on evidence and then arguing the law. In Virginia courts, the circuit court is the senior trial court of record. So this was the sort of pivotal moment in the life cycle of this legal issue before going up to the Virginia Court of Appeals potentially. So it was fantastic. I can't overstate. I think it's one thing even to take a course like trial advocacy where you learn the mechanics of what a trial is supposed to be like, but it's still fundamentally different to sit in a courtroom and have someone expecting you to say what the law is, or at least to advocate your position. So that was my experience.
Sounds wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing it. Catherine, let's go to you next.
So I'm part of our judicial externship program. So I've been with Judge Kailani Memmer in the Western District of Virginia. She's a federal magistrate judge. So I've been with her from September, and I actually just had my last day on Monday, which is really sad. I wish I could be there forever, but it's been a great experience. So with the judicial externship program, we have a class component taught by Judge Carson, who is a W&L alum and a Roanoke Circuit Court judge. And so he is wonderful teacher. He also teaches some of our trial advocacy classes in at the law school. But we have a class component once a week where he kind of teaches us tips and tricks about what we should be doing working for our judge, kind of a brief overview about certain issues to kind of bring us up to speed. We also do presentations and kind of stand-ups where we talk about what we're doing with our judge. So it's really interesting to not only share my own experiences, but to hear about from my peers kind of what they're doing and what they're seeing in court. I know some of my peers have been able to go to other courthouses and see kind of our peers in action, and go to their courts if there's a hot topic issue that's happening. So I really appreciated the experience both because I've been able to kind of just be in a courtroom, see. I had no idea what a magistrate judge was before I came to law school, or even really before this year, I'll be honest. So it's been really cool to see what Judge Memmer does, and be in the courtroom with her. And then also being able to kind of improve my legal research and writing by writing things that actually do help her entire chambers team kind of get things done. So I've really enjoyed my experience. Yeah, it's been a great year.
Perfect. Thank you. Ariana.
So I'm in the Human Rights and Refugee Protection practicum, which is a little bit different. It's a little similar to a clinic, except it's just fully a course. But we do have clients. It's a really interesting time to be in this class because obviously, given the immigration landscape, things are changing. The course culminates in a 2-week trip to San Diego / Tijuana to work with a nonprofit organization called Al Otro Lado. And so we've taken on quite a few of their clients. And we've done research for the ACLU. Right now, I'm working with a client who is a veteran who's here on humanitarian parole. But he served in the military in the 70s and was promised US citizenship and didn't receive it. So now we're trying to figure out how we can get him to be at least a legal permanent resident. But there are obviously a lot of challenges and tribulations that have come along the way. And if I've learned anything, it's that the law is ever changing, and a good lawyer needs to be nimble and flexible. And I've definitely been able to see that firsthand through this course.
3 students, 3 different stories, and that is what you get. Every student at W&L has a different story, but it's wonderful to hear all of yours, so thank you for that. We are getting close on time, and I have a few last questions for you all. If our attendees have any additional questions, please use this time to go ahead and put them into the chat. So I wanted to know from you all, as we're reaching the end of your law school journey, what will each of you miss most, and what are you most excited about as you move forward? And Ariana, I'm going to circle back to you first.
Okay, I am gonna miss this W&L bubble. I call it a bubble, which may be derogatory, but it feels like a protective bubble, honestly. Like it feels like the real world doesn't exist here in Lexington in the best way possible. I am like very excited for my career and kind of the rest of my life, but I don't think I'll ever have a time where I have so many loved ones that are just within 10 minutes of walking away from me. And so many people who care about my personal and professional development. So I'm definitely gonna miss that. I'm gonna miss just the nature around Lexington and our small businesses and the Friday night free wine tastings in town, just the things you can't really get elsewhere. But yeah, I'm very excited to use the skills that I've learned and all of the wisdom that people have imparted on me in my legal career and doing the things that I've always set out to do. So I'm excited for that, but I'm very sad to leave this space for sure.
Thank you for that. Spencer, we'll go to you next.
Sure. I I'm gonna regurgitate, I think, everything Ariana just said. It Most of my friends are staying here to study for the bar, which I'm doing as well. So I haven't had to actually grapple with telling folks goodbye yet. That will be legitimately very difficult, I think. Just as Ariana said, you really do. I have friends here um, that will be in my wedding that I didn't know, assuming I have a wedding one day. Um, the memories you make in this really strange. It's such an odd place as Lexington because you have, particularly within law school, it's far less homogenous, frankly, than the undergrad. You have people from all over the country with a wide variety of backgrounds, who, like I said, I think come here in part because this is expected to be a unique community, and that really has been my experience. I am extremely sad to leave friends, and not just my closest friends, but even just colleagues that you see, in passing that I respect and admire, and I'm excited to see what they do with their legal career. To that end, I am also excited to put the skills to work that hopefully I've been honing and developing for 2.5, almost 3 years now. I'm excited to not be a broke law student, to earn a living again, which will be great. Um, but the excitement, I don't know, frankly, if it eclipses the things I will miss. Obviously, this is a part of life. I came to this school and I've had a fantastic experience, and now it's time to go do the next thing. But I will most definitely miss Lexington and the people in it for sure.
Thank you, Spencer. And just looking to time, Catherine, I'll let you share about what you're most going to miss and what you're going to be looking forward to. But then everybody can ruminate on the final question, definitely the most popular question from our attendees, which is what advice would you give to an incoming 1L? If you could go back and speak to your 1L self, what do you wish that you had known, or what advice would you share? So, Catherine, first off for you, what are you excited for, or what are you sad to be saying goodbye to?
I mean, I don't think I can say it better than Ariana and Spencer just did, but I echo everything. I think I'm going to miss the community. I'm going to miss Lexington. I'm especially going to miss having 4 seasons and being able to look out my window and see, beautiful mountains, or this one tree right by my apartment changes every season. So I'm going to miss that, being back in Houston where it's just hot. So I think that I'll definitely miss the people and the place more than anything else. And just, I mean, it is truly, like Spencer said, like, it's such a special place, and like Ariana said, a bubble, but the best kind of bubble. And I think I'm also excited to be able to, make a living again and have some money incoming, and kind of get on with my life. But at the same time, I don't think it eclipses kind of what we've gotten to experience the past 3 years. So it is definitely a bittersweet moment. But in terms of advice to give incoming 1Ls, my advice is to do nothing. Like, truly do nothing before your 1L summer. Take a trip that you've been wanting to take, relax. If you really feel like you need to do something, there was a prep something that was like a couple hours that I like listened to, kind of sort of not really, that I think one of the big companies sent out. I think it was like Barbary or Kaplan or something, and it was like how to prepare for law school. And my mom bought me a ton of books, like what to expect your 1L year, and I didn't read them. But if you're feeling so inclined, I think those are useful just to kind of hear what someone else is saying. I think talking with current students and asking them, you'll probably get a lot of the same advice, which is like just chill out. But I think I would recommend coming to Lexington a week or two before orientation. Like Ariana said, like, I met some of my best friends kind of during that pre-orientation period, and it's nice to have some familiar faces on day one that you know who you're sitting with when you walk into the moot court room. But it's okay if you don't, because again, everyone's kind of in that same boat of wanting to meet people. But I think if you can get here early and just know a couple friendly faces, I know when I got to Lexington, I put something in the group and was like, anyone want to meet up for drinks at like Burridge Taps? And then we were supposed to go stargazing 2 weeks later and it didn't happen, but we ended up having a party at someone's house instead. So definitely lots of opportunities to like meet people, but would recommend getting here early and doing nothing if you can before your 1L year.
Perfect. Ariana, real quick piece of advice.
My piece of advice, Dean Rodecker hit on it, but you've an example of 3 different students who have had 3 very different experiences here. And that's how it is for every 1L. Every 1L, obviously you're going through the same thing, but you experience it so differently. So listen to yourself and listen to your own needs. Block out the noise, because it's easy to look to your right and to your left and see someone doing something that you're not doing and getting super anxious about it. Don't worry. You know yourself better than you think you do. Trust your gut on those things. I had to remind myself that many, many, many times. And so that's my biggest advice. Cancel out the noise, trust your gut. You've got this.
That's wonderful. Spencer, I'll let you close us out. What's your final piece of advice?
Just I would validate that the hard work pays off. This place will reward people who work hard and are kind to others. Your professional network begins the moment you step on campus, and you're making impressions for better or for worse. Most of you, almost all of you, presumably it will be for the better. But I would just validate that first year when you feel like you're drowning. Anyone who seems like they're not drowning probably is full of it. It's overwhelming, and that's okay. Like Garyana said, you know yourself best, and when you work hard and you're kind to others, I think this place rewards that, and that's really simple, but I think it's true.
That's a great place to leave it at. Thank you so much to our panelists. It was really fun to walk down some memory lanes with you all. And thank you to all of our attendees for their attention and their great questions. If you have other questions, please feel free to email us. I put our general email address for the Law Admissions Office into the chat. Please reach out and let us know what else we can help you with. For now, I'll say goodbye and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.